right.
You're live.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
I gotta log back in really quick.
Thank you so much.
Take one.
I know, sorry. It didn't connect, it bumped me back out. For some odd reason.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay, today's date is September 9th. We're gonna begin our board meeting. We welcome our guests with us that are online and a few of you in the audience. Thanks for being here. In attendance, we have Steve Black, board member, Mary Shumway, board member, Lori Maud, board member, Superintendent Nelson, and Kyle Hosser, business administrator. And so I need, Nelson Yellowman is he on the phone?
Mhm.
So he's with us through the phone, and we'll excuse Lucille Cody for some personal business. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we'll turn the time over to the superintendent for the West update.
Yes, the spotlight. I'd like to spotlight two things this month. First of all, last month you had a proposal come to you, and you'll hear more about it later in the meeting, regarding the River Region Internet Project, with the possibility of us taking internet from our school and directly streaming that into the homes of our students, which was kind of, I think, a little bit visionary and out of the box, and I don't know that I've seen it done anywhere else. But at that point, it was just being explained that this is in the works, and we're trying to see if we can put everything together and get this thing to materialize. And I'm here to report, which I'm sure you've probably seen in the papers and in some of the press, that in the special session, the legislators allocated 3.9, which I've also heard has been rounded up to $4 million for this project to happen in San Juan County. So that is just absolutely the source of funding that we needed to make this go. And so it is in high gear, actually. It's taken off, and you'll hear more about it if you have any questions or things. It is on the agenda for Kyle and Aaron to do an update and give you a little more details about the actual project and what it's looking like right now. But I'm excited about that, and I think it's worthy of a spotlight at this time. The other very exciting spotlight is that Whitehorse High School has come out of turnaround, the turnaround program in the Utah State Board Education meeting, last meeting. They made that action item and moved them out of turnaround status, and this is a tribute to the academic achievement of their students, which a number of factors go into that report. But we're excited about the progress they're making, and I really want to spotlight the things that are happening from, the district support, Principal Schaefer in the building with leadership, Devin Gosney's, both of them as an administrative team, and then of course the whole staff working as a tremendous team in that building, and the students and the parents and the community all working together really well. That's quite a tribute that you can make those type of achievements when you go into those programs. They have some pretty lofty goals that you have to obtain. That's the good news. The bad news is the marks they just continue to climb. So Whitehorse and every other school, and we've kind of paused a little bit with no testing last spring, but all the schools know that the mark just continues to climb as to what student achievement has to look like. But certainly this is a time of celebration for Whitehorse High School and their staff, parents and students. So I spotlight both of those things.
Thank you. Yes, congratulations to Whitehorse. All right, the first part of our agenda, COVID reentry.
Yeah, I do have a number of pictures on here because I wanted the board thinking that, we're not going into buildings a lot right now. Even I've only been in a little bit, and that's something we'll talk about, but that we're looking at that. So I didn't know really how much the board is even aware of what's happened inside the buildings and what it's looking like And so just to give you kind of a snapshot of what it looks like, I have a number of pictures on here, and I'm not prepared to go through each of these. I would maybe like to highlight a couple of them, or 2 or 3 of them, but and I'd start with the very bottom of the list, White Horse Outdoor Tents. I was absolutely amazed at the work that our schools are doing, and this was evident in a number of schools. Monument Valley High School had a similar situation. Whitehorse, the day I did travel down through this, the efforts were taken to meet the parents and the students is pretty, I literally was in awe. And the organization in it, that it's being successful. This is a picture of you're only seeing about 5 or 6 tents, but there were even more around the corner. And they have teachers or staff members at every tent. And Principal Schaefer meets the cars at the gate and directs them to a tent. And the student and the parent go to the tent, and there's a very outlined template that they work down through with the parent and the teacher, the parent and the student, to ensure that they have what they need educationally. They get thumb drives, they get all their materials, they have expectations explained to them. And this is an ongoing process that's happening right now. And they feel, there's a much more comfortable feeling about meeting outside than meeting inside. And so these tents have been taken outside. I think something similar is happening at Monument Valley as well and in other areas. But that was an area that when I saw how far we were reaching and how effectively it was put together, I was very impressed. And I just wanted the board to realize some of that. Maybe I'd go up to the beginning of the pictures. You can see that this is Albert R. Lyman. I was also very impressed with Albert R. Lyman as I walked through. They have signage everywhere. They've even had a competition to come up with some very clever signs. And if you look through these pictures, you'll see that. They've had a lot of fun with it. But in every case, I don't know if we can find one where their lunchroom, you can see the actual, let's see if it's the next one. Okay, for their bathrooms, they have their occupancy. Their lunchroom tables have little papers on it where they will write who's on the table, so in case they needed to go back and trace, they would know who was there that day. And they're keeping a record, and just a lot of thought and effort going into our plans at the school level. And I just wanted the board to get at least a snapshot of what's happening, so you kind of have an idea of what's the work that's been done at the school level. And you can get an idea of that there is a tremendous amount of thought and effort to make sure we're following our plans and that they are being effective. And I've been very impressed as I've went around the district in all areas. The second part of this item that I just wanted to talk about was, I think any good plan, and I think there's lots of evidence that our plans were, I think to this point, our reentry plan, I think, has shown a lot of success in a variety of areas. But I don't think there's any perfect plan. And so I think there's a number of areas that we might want to revisit and possibly monitor and adjust a little bit. And so I wanted also an opportunity for you to speak to anything you might have heard or be hearing out there with the public, because sometimes you might hear things that we haven't heard. But as for the most part, some of the things, and I actually might have Julie speak to this because it's mostly in the mountain region. Would you feel comfortable just speaking to what you're hearing from your principals and give the board a feeling of where you feel like the schools are at this moment?
Sure, so the general consensus.
Could you come up here closer to the mic?
So the general consensus with Binding Elementary, they are, one of their biggest challenges is seating in the cafeteria. So that's one of the things that they would like us to look at as far as we're going to have to be aware of, is that we're going to have to make some adjustments as students are returning from option 3 or option 2 at home. We're even needing more space. And so initially we tried to do that 6 foot. We had to go to 4 foot in the cafeterias, masking until they sit down, eating, masking when they leave, trying to minimize that time to 15 minutes in those spaces. But we're finding as we're having more students return, that's going to be more challenging. And so we just, if you have any conversation or any thoughts or concerns, but we are going to have to start putting students closer together in order to manage that. And we've always said in our plan and in working with Kurt Benj and the health department that we would do the best we could in those situations. And we just don't have any other spaces to feed the students, and make that work. And so just kind of be aware that that's an adjustment that's probably going to be made. ARL is in the same situation for their lunch as they have in San Juan High. So the Blanding schools are in the biggest, have the biggest challenges with the cafeteria right now. Something that we have had conversation about at most all of the mountain region schools is the visitors and volunteers. Making sure that we have a system in place where visitors can't, if a parent does need to come into the building and go to a classroom or visit with a child or something, that is available and that can happen and where it's just not open to visitors or volunteers, within the classrooms. Our teachers would love to have that happen at some point, but the feedback from our schools in general is that they're not ready for that. With the safety and health of our employees and the sensitivity there, they're not ready for more people in the building. They feel comfortable where we're at, and so we'd like to possibly leave that and re-look at that maybe second quarter. And that's kind of their feedback. So that piece.
Julie, one thing that I have had some feedback with is with some of the teachers, their biggest obstacle, these particular teachers,
Yeah.
is this blended learning. If you choose out, you have to stay out for that semester, quarter, and then you come back in. This in and out, especially more at the high school, they're feeling a little bit that it's being violated for the fact that, I'll use it as a day to keep my child home, or I'll use it as a day to go out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're having to kind of do that, versus when there's a commitment of you're either in or you're out for at least, 2.5 months?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's been brought up or considered.
Can I
So-
speak to that just a
Sure.
little?
Mhm.
Our philosophy behind that, and I would advocate we stay with the philosophy, we just try to educate better, because I think there's been a lack of maybe everyone fully understanding it, but our philosophy has been with option 2, that yes, it can be a flexible means, but you should always allow the school time to prepare one way or the other.
Sure.
The philosophy behind it was we thought that even when school started, there could be a need where parents would have felt comfortable at the beginning of the school, but 2 weeks in, when they find out there's maybe a positive case in the class or in the school, they might feel very uncomfortable about sending their child. So option 2 was designed with this idea, but it was not designed with the idea, today I want them out, today I want them back. I need them to babysit today, so let's have them school at home. It was not that it was designed that more and more kids would go back to the classroom. And that's something we're seeing. The numbers that were enrolled for option 2 and were participating as virtual students is greatly reduced from even the first of the school year till now. Even I got a report in one school, 6 just even since yesterday had changed back into school. We're hoping to keep them coming back to the classroom, and in a perfect world, we'll get all of our kids back to the classroom and we'll know that they're safe there. But so I'm an advocate of working with parents and helping them understand it. It's not just back and forth, but at the same time, I'm not in favor of it being quarter by quarter option 2. Now option 3 is very different, but option 2, and I understand teachers' frustration with it, but I think we've got to meet in the middle somewhere, myself, between the teachers and the parents. It shouldn't be just willy-nilly back and forth. But I do
I think
think,
there's probably a few that are doing that. It's not-
Like trying to work individually with those parents and help them understand, for the best interest of their child. It's also super challenging for a teacher to know what to count on. And so that is one thing that we really tried to promote with that, because there were a lot of questions up front with that option 2, and we tried to promote consistency. So whatever they choose, if it's 4 days a week or whatever, from the front, which we weren't really advocating for anyway, we were advocating you either start at home or you start at school with that option. But that they were consistent, and then the schools have put in place, if the student is going to return, they've asked them for 3 days notice, because we had 5 kids come back to kindergarten at Montesdale Elementary this week, and they just showed up on Monday or Tuesday of this week, and it is really hard because of the adjustments that the teachers have made to make that work, that we really do need a heads up, so we have put that in place as
Well,
well.
I think
3
if
days
those-
is I think what we'd be asking for.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem, I think if the parents understand that they can't one day, and it is a 3-day process, I think we'll see that cut down.
Yeah.
And some of that frustration with
Yeah.
some of those teachers.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, cause that is something we're dealing with on.
Could I bring up a couple areas that I'd like the board to be aware that are hitting right now, that I think if the board had any input or advice for us, because we are dealing with this right now. A couple of the main areas that are hitting us is student activities, because we're getting back into the fall, and this would be definitely in the mountain region where the students are in. They're having their regular school day for the most part. You'll see the numbers, but we have a high percentage of our students in face-to-face instruction. Their activities, their football, their volleyball, their cross-country, their other activities are happening. And there's a little bit of pressure to start seeing things like homecoming assemblies and those kind of activities happen. And in our plan, we clearly say those things have to be virtual or we don't support them. We're not gonna have large groups in the auditorium. But we are getting some pressure to reevaluate some of that and look at that. And anyway, if the board has any, that's one area. Another area is when we are having our activities, like our outdoor volleyball or indoor volleyball, outdoor football, I made a decision, and this was made by me, to not have a concession stand. And I think we've reached a time where maybe we want to revisit that and see if that's still what we want to see happen. The decision was based just on the idea that that's one more group of getting people together, you're handling food. Anyway, you're usually in line for even sometimes up to 10 or 15 minutes, with 15 minutes being the threshold. You certainly don't want to go over. The people inside the little room are usually in there for hours. Anyway, just those factors, on top of all the other factors, it seemed like a good area to take one more factor off the page. But there is some concern that maybe we should be opening back up our concession stands. And I'm really weighing with that. I think I could be supportive of that if the board is, but just wanted to throw that out. And then the other thing to keep in mind that I really want to emphasize as we make all these decisions is I am very much aware that our staff across the district are everywhere from this is absolutely concerning to me, I feel this is life and death, to this is blown completely out of proportion. I get all the way in between. And we have to balance it knowing and valuing all sides of concern. Whatever personal philosophy people have, I'm concerned that the decisions we make don't make us more difficult to staff our buildings and to staff the things that we need to. And we need to recognize that whether we feel over here or over there, we have large groups of staff all the way across the spectrum. And we've got to try to be mindful of that and navigate that very sensitively. So that's what, I keep thinking of as we go through these decisions. But I want you to be aware that student activities is a really big one right now, that we're making some decisions on if that's going to even be allowed or to what it's going to look like. And concessions is getting some push to revisit. Those are the two big ones I'm seeing.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the last, I guess. I've heard a lot of feedback from people who would wonder why we're not having concessions, just selling packaged things, all that really good stuff for you, like pop and candy bars and chips. And, so that people aren't actually handling food themselves and, using the sanitizer when you're, now, from what I've seen is there's already everybody all bunched together at the stands, and so bunching together to wait in line doesn't seem like a big difference to me. So, that's been suggested by a lot of people, to me is just, why not just sell those packaged goods that they can go down and buy. Going back to Julie, did you mention that some kids are Monday through Thursday or 4 days a week?
I use that as an example that some parents initially thought that they could pick
I
days of
see.
the week.
But we're not doing that.
Yeah, we're not
Okay.
encouraging that at all.
Okay, yeah, because I thought, what's the purpose of going 4 days but staying
Yeah.
home to
Yep.
social distance one day and then
Absolutely.
going back? So,
Yeah,
okay.
but just
I
know
just
that we
want-
have had to have those conversations with some parents.
Okay.
that thought
Yeah,
that
well,
that would
it's
be
kinda
okay.
handy to go when you want and not go
Yep.
when you don't want, so. Okay, then the volunteer thing. When I was at Blanding Elementary, I had a great visit over there, so thank you, Mr. Porter. That's when I first learned that we do have volunteers in the schools. The high school kids, so we are introducing more bodies, you know, taking them from the high school and into the elementary. And I find it, I don't know if the word is troubling, that some people can go and volunteer, but the parents really cannot go in regularly to their child's school without making an appointment and saying, I have a need, I need to see this child. We're still still bringing extra bodies and germs and breathing into those schools, but it can't be, right now we're saying it can't be parents, it can be other people. And that doesn't sit great with me to say, we'll introduce people into the school, but not parents.
So to my knowledge, it's our students at Monticello High School and Monticello and at San Juan High that are in a class that are connected with a teacher as far as, you know, supporting a teacher. And that is the only, they're not really volunteering, it's part of their class. And those are the only additional outside people that are coming in, to my knowledge.
But they're still, you know, coming in, you know, wearing their masks, breathing, but that just doesn't quite sit right with me,
Yeah,
that
and
we
I think
are
part of
allowing
it-
people in, even if it is a class, parents are their parents, you know?
And part of the challenge is, I think, when you look at our parent clientele, we're opening up to hundreds of people that could possibly be coming in if they chose to on a daily basis. So I think
Well,
that's,
you just kind of have to beg people to come in.
yeah, so I think that's the kind of thing, and that's where, you know, like at Blanding Elementary, we talked very specifically about when we were looking at this section of the reentry plan, that, you know, the watchdogs program would have to be on hold, and some of those things, that because it just brought in a lot of people at one time. So I think that was the thinking behind that.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean it can't be relooked at.
I
But
just,
let's go back to what the staff is asking. What's the staff asking right now?
So, so when Jay and Stephanie and I visited about it, a couple of days ago, they were, at some point, their teachers definitely want to have, we love and appreciate our volunteers and our parents. But they're feeling that with COVID itself and with the safety and health, they're feeling like they're in a really good place as far as where we're at right now. They want to bring that back, and we even talked about relooking at that second quarter, just saying, okay, maybe after first quarter we relook at that, just because we feel like people are pretty settled, and we do have enough staff members there that are concerned that if, we start bringing in additional outside people, we may possibly lose some.
Some staff.
So are you comfortable in waiting until?
Or paras,
yeah,
classified or certified.
I'm definitely uncomfortable that, people get to go into that building that aren't employed there and parents aren't them, but I'm uncomfortable with that, but is what it is, so I think parents, they don't even know what their child's classrooms look like, they don't, they don't get that interaction.
So we have talked about that, and we
in
have,
school.
we've talked about, making sure that there is a system in place that parents, if parents want to go see their child's classroom or whatever, they are more than welcome to, come at that after school time, make an appointment, go, walk down to their child's classroom, visit, see where they sit, that kind of a thing. We definitely want to, support that. And at every school that's available. So it's just not the regularly scheduled volunteers that we were having in the past that would happen every Tuesday or Thursday or whatever that's happening, that's been suspended. So.
Steve, do you have any comments?
Well, on that issue, I like to see volunteers in the classroom. I think it adds to the education, the level of education that we can offer. You're taking one teacher, you're providing a task out to others. So I like that. Well, I guess I'm a proponent of having volunteers in the classroom, but my thought is that if there's excess capacity given social distancing in the classrooms for an extra body, I'm all for it.
Okay. So you wanna wait till the end of the quarter, or what do you thinking?
If, I don't know, we spend so, the lifetime of the students and the teachers trying to involve families and try to encourage that education, connection with families and the school, and want them to feel like we want them part of their child's education. And so if I would have got, if there wasn't anybody else introduced into the school except for those people who actually work there, then I would say, okay, we are holding tight to what the governor says and being really, really strict. But the fact that we're bringing other people in, but we're shutting the very parents out, it just sits wrong. I'm just afraid too that parents are gonna say, fine, when they want volunteers, that's really hard to commit that every Thursday, every Friday, every whatever it is. I had teachers begging me all through the years to come more. We need more, we need more. And so parents, try to figure out how to get their other children taken care of so that they can accommodate teachers and do those things for, they're coming in not just for their child, but for many other children. And oftentimes the parent that's coming in, their child doesn't need any extra help, but they come in to help others. And I'm afraid we're creating that there is this whole COVID thing that is real and an issue, but we're letting other people come in and saying parents can't, so.
Okay,
But
we have
so-
1 minute to wrap this up.
Okay, so that's my.
So do you think it would be, do you think it would be in our best interest to go back and look at, the number of students that are teachers' aides? We could reassign them within their own buildings. That could be an option.
Well, keep in mind,
Well,
these student
I'm not
aides,
against them coming in.
these student aides are in our building somewhere. These are not these
They're
are
in
not
the high
out-
school and then
yes.
they're coming into the
Yeah,
elementary.
but if, let's just say one was positive, they would be positive in the high school, they would be positive in the
And then
elementary
they
school.
spread it to the elementary.
So, yes, but they would spread it to the anyone around them. So we're not avoiding a situation, we're just changing the dynamics of the situation, but we certainly, but by someone coming completely out of our system, that is different. They wouldn't even be in our system would we not allow visitors into our buildings. And so that's kind of the line, I think the logic that was used is they're already in one of our buildings. They are a student in our system presently. Just like they move from class to class, building to building. But an outside person would not even be would never have any ability, a threat of any kind of a risk unless we let them in our building.
We don't have anyone outside coming in.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well,
Okay,
Mm-mm.
so we need to provide some direction. We've got 1 minute to do it.
let's wait till second quarter, start getting it in place, how teachers
I would
maybe want to.
recommend we monitor it for the rest of this
Okay.
quarter. We are 2 weeks in, and we look at this, and I think second quarter would be a perfect place to maybe look at that change if we need to. I will let the board know that student activities is something that's getting a lot of pressure to happen right now, and traditionally homecoming would happen right now in football. According to our plan, they're not gonna happen in a traditional sense in an auditorium where we bring school groups together. So it's either gonna have to be a virtual type thing, which is written into our plan, or it doesn't happen. And so anyway, I just want the board to be aware of that. Homecoming could move maybe to winter, and they could have a winter homecoming and possibly do some of the same things that they didn't do in the fall if the situation has changed, but I don't know what it'll look like in winter either. No one does, but anyway, if the board has any input on that, that is something that is gonna be decided very quickly. I've gotta make a decision and give some direction on it.
Well, all the homecoming activities anyway are in groups. They can't be in groups anyway. So
Yes.
really, what's
So the
activity
instruction that we
is a
base,
game,
so the
right?
instruction that we basically been giving them so far in their planning, because we have had student councils at both high schools, in the process of planning, and we have visited with them, and they are, anything that, following our reentry plan, large gatherings, over 50 are not going to happen. So currently, San Juan High School is planning to do they're both planning to do a homecoming, a queen assembly, but it's not an assembly in the auditorium. At San Juan High, they'll allow each student to have, actually at both schools, it was determined this morning that they would like to allow at least the parents of those participants, and depending on the number of participants, they could have one or two. They'd be socially distanced, have to wear their mask, keep that number under 50. They're pre-recording some of the pieces, but all the students will be in the classrooms and it would be broadcast to the classrooms. So they would watch the assembly from the classroom. So they're not bringing the big group into the auditorium. The only people that would be in there would be parents, and they would be socially distanced with masks and under 50. So anything in addition to that, like things like the powder puff, things like the obstacle course at the high schools,
Dances.
we have told them that those are large gatherings and those won't happen. They could possibly happen in the future if things change. And I will tell you that both student councils, both administrators at both schools, they have been extremely respectful of the process and thinking through what could work and what couldn't work. And pretty much they've whittled it down. San Juan High still would like to do a parade, and they've looked for opportunities to do that in social distance and add additional vehicles. We talked about the decorating has to be in smaller groups and it has to be organized. They're not going to throw candy. They're looking at bagging the candy for the elementary kids. They do want to take something to the elementary. So they're looking at some of those ideas to make that work. Monticello High School this time is not going to do a parade. So it's very minimal what they're doing. Both communities, have posted on social media outside of the school that they're doing homecoming dances, and that has nothing to do with the school.
So I think as long as we follow the reentry plan, and, I mean, you guys, you know what needs to
And that's
happen,
basically
doesn't
what we're
need to
doing is
happen.
following the reentry plan and also the yellow phased guidelines, from the governor, and
So
so.
are we gonna add concessions to what?
Yeah, I'll make a decision on that. I probably am willing to let them start selling pre-packaged stuff and have concession stands unless the board feels we should not. That really wasn't even specified in our reentry plan, so that was just a decision that I made, and I'm willing to, the recommendation is to revisit that. Schools would like to see that happen, I'm fine. I worry a little bit, but I don't know enough to say I know anything. The only thing that scares me in all of this is 15 positive cases in any one school and we're 100% virtual probably. And I really want to go the right way to where it's less risk, not more risk. But I don't have any idea. No one does. So
Nelson? See there? Does he have any, would you ask me any
Nelson, can you hear
comments?
President Juan? Nelson?
He'll speak up. Can
Can you hear me?
Do you have any comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question, Superintendent. It sounds like the discussion is for the Mountain Region schools, nothing coming from the river region, and I know we're not in a perfect world down here. I want to know what are some of our continuing challenges as far as instructional for students, and how are they being addressed. I would like to know what those challenges are and how we're going to address them, such as parent and students needing some help with their studies or whatever it needs to be. Would you touch on that, please?
Yep, that's good. I will let Christy speak to that. She's gonna definitely have a better perspective on that. So Christy, do you wanna speak to
Sure.
that?
Yeah, Nelson, thank you for that question. As everyone is aware, there are significant challenges in supporting our students with remote learning. So some of the things that have been put in place by the schools in the region is developing a student learning plan. And that learning plan includes, it's created, the learning plan with the teacher, with the parent, and with the student. And part of that is, what internet access do you have? Is it none at all? Is it moderate? Is it great? So that's part of the plan as well. So teachers are determining at what level they can get that access to that online learning. And then from there, we are using all the resources we have. I think Erin's going to address some of that in a minute about how we're moving forward with some of the internet, working out the internet issues. We do have hotspots that are out there. We've been issuing Chromebooks that are updated. We've tried a variety of things. Some things have already failed. We're learning. So we did some jump drives, and that was moderate, didn't work as well. So now we're looking at other features using the EPUB features, which is the ebook for students who don't have internet. The other component of that is that we are scheduling appointments for students. So particularly for our students that are in special education and have an IEP. So those appointments can be scheduled with the special education teacher, and they can come in individually and receive services. That also includes all of the support services, our itinerant services through special ed. So whether that's physical therapy or speech, we still are moving forward with having individual students come in. We also have that available for other classes as well if the student needs to come in and get additional support. And we are setting that up so it is one student in the classroom at a time. And that seems to be very positively received, both in elementary and in secondary, so that parents have that choice, and if the student has the need, then they can work together to make that happen. So our administrators are working with the teachers and scheduling those appointments as needed.
Nelson, did that answer your question?
Now, are there hot spots that are distance away from certain families' home? Do they have to, for example, maybe have to drive to the school or somewhere?
Yes,
Do we have
so,
those kind of
yes.
situations?
Yes, so Erin has been working on getting those set up, so that's using the radio waves that we currently have and expanding those to a number of sites. We're also putting up signs in those sites that say this is a San Juan School District Wi-Fi site, because we found that sometimes people feel uncomfortable going in front of someone's house, for example. So if we have that, we're hoping that sign will help with some of that. We also have like for example, Helchita has a spot as well, so the students, because we have quite a few students in Helchita, so that gives them, they can go a short distance and get access. Our goal ultimately is to have a student within 20 minutes of internet access through that plan. So that's what Erin's team has really been working, diligently at trying to make that happen for all students in the River region.
Okay. My next question. Are all the services being met, such as are the students receiving their school lunches, or are the students getting other resources that they usually get on a traditional school day?
Yes, so we do have our buses that roll out first thing in the morning, and I really have to say Brad in transportation and Anna, managing our kitchens, they have done a fabulous job. We knew that moving into this, how things went in fourth quarter, we had a lot of teacher support for that. And we knew going into this, new reentry plan that teachers needed to focus on instruction. So they really have taken that on, and they have done a fabulous job getting those buses out and rolling with meals each day for families. A parent, family can opt out if they don't want the meals, and I know we've had a number of families that have said, we don't want the meal. But that is available, and we are delivering those daily to all of our students in the River region. Some of the other resources such as tribal clothing and support from getting additional food from our food banks that we have in the schools, that is all continuing. Our liaisons have really been hard at work helping get those resources out, as well as our student advocates, social workers have been contacting families, and as families have come in to develop those learning plans or over the phone, if there's resources that are needed, they are working with them as well. So that includes if they're needing, telehealth through counseling services, if they've received that in the past or if they have a need now. So a lot of those same resources that we'd offer in person, we are still providing those resources in whatever way we can, just like we would in a normal school year. I think the challenge a little bit is that, when students are in the building all the time, it's easier to identify those needs. And now it's a little bit of a challenge. We're having to do a lot more contacting and really paying attention and listening to try to make sure those needs are met.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions that I had.
Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move to, yes, thank you very much. We're gonna move to number 2, the school registration numbers.
Yes, again, I wanted the board again to get a feel for what we're seeing across the district. We wondered, we had a lot of concern as to Would we lose a lot of kids to option 3 type experience? And when we first started building our plan, we didn't have an option 3 type experience. So any student that felt they wanted a more traditional virtual experience and they wanted to be long-term in that capacity, if we didn't have an option, they had many other options such as Utah Virtual Academy, Harmony. There's 3 or 4 of them that are advertising and very active. And so if we didn't have the option, they would go with those options. The drawback would be we would lose 100% of the funding for that child. So by creating an option 3 for us and keeping them in our system, we retain at least the high, in some cases, all of the funding. In some cases, it's a significant portion of the funding for those students. So that's what really helped us in trying to create this option 3. But we really wondered, how would the breakdown look, and would we end up losing students overall? So this is an initial look at that, and you're looking at the Bajo Mountain region, because the river region is 100% virtual, and actually the numbers we're seeing out of the river region right now are up over last year. We're still trying to make ensure that they are correct, because we're at that 10-day drop point right now where we need to look at that. But the mountain region is slightly down from last year in October, and you can look at that there. And then if you look at the district, we are up when you bring in the river region. But you can see the breakdown between option 1, option 2, and option 3 in each school.
So our river region, do we have students in option 3 as well as, two?
Yes,
We have one.
just
We have
one.
student.
Oh, just
Very
one.
few, but I knew it was few, but just one. Yeah, it's very few.
Okay.
And of this data, several of those option 2 students are returning or have, they started in option 2, but it's not totally current as
It's
far as-
changing by the hour.
Yeah, it
to be
literally
honest.
is. By the day, we're having
More and more
parents
kids are
say,
coming
this
back
isn't
to
working for
option
me, I
1.
need to bring my child back, so.
Okay.
Much more that way than pulling them out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're coming back to the classroom,
Okay.
so that's good.
Thank you. All
Question.
right. Yes, Nelson?
I'm just curious, on these option 3, are there many that are struggling district-wide, or however you want to break it up? But
Yes, there are, Nelson. We are, and again, we have built what I would consider a pretty thorough support system. There are teachers assigned that will contact parents and work with students, but it's really not that different than when we're in a traditional in-person. There's students that are struggling, but we've tried to make sure that we are not just sitting on our hands while these kids struggle and fall behind. So we have an active system where teachers are assigned to these students, they contact parents, and they are trying to remediate the situation, improve it. But there are some struggling, yes, we're already picking up on that.
And we're seeing a pretty significant learning curve for parents that have chosen that option. Really taking over that role as the teacher and just having a teacher of support here in the district that contacts them. So there's a pretty steep learning curve for parents and students, and we're seeing and having contact with those parents and learning that parents are struggling as well.
All right. River Region Internet. Aaron and Kyle.
Just to give an update to the board, we do have a lot of different moving pieces that are in play right now. We are holding weekly meetings with Solitech to discuss the rollout plan as well as equipment purchases. And I am currently working with the State Office of Education on solidifying and making sure that we have that money set up in Utah grants so we can begin to spend against it. We have an internal code set up, but we're still waiting for that verification or MOU so that we can start to draw down on those funds and get some of the equipment, because we know that Solitech's currently purchased some of that. So almost a daily contact to the state office to try to find out where we're at on that as far as the fund transfer from the state legislative office down to the Utah State Office of Education so they can again get it into Utah grants. And so there's definitely a lot of moving pieces there. And again, we've been meeting every Friday to discuss and work on the progress for that. project. We've also been made aware that there is a possibility to file for an extension, and we're waiting for clarification from the State Office of Education on how we need to go about that process so that we can ensure if we do exceed the December 31st deadline, that we'll still be covered and have the ability to spend and utilize those funds as designated for this plan. So a lot of those different pieces right now, just from a legal standpoint, finalizing that contract as well with Solitech and working with our lawyers to make sure that we're bulletproof on that as much as we can be to ensure that San Juan School District receives the services that we're planning on receiving.
Just an update on everything. The engineering and the design of the system has been done by Solitech with help from us. We've done a lot of tower prospecting in the Montezuma Creek area currently. We're moving west from there. And there are a lot of resources there that we're able to utilize from Elk Petroleum. Cellular One has given us some vertical real estate, and the chapter houses have been very open. Also, community members that we've approached have been very, very supportive of monopoles or temporary towers and that we can put up so that we can repeat that signal around. The idea is that we'll build a ring of towers so that if there is a break in one of the radios, there's still a way around that ring for each of the areas. Montezuma Creek, Bluff, and Big Water Mesa, south of Bluff, the 191 corridor from Sand Island down. We have Rapley Ridge that serves both sides. It will serve Halchita and Mexican Hat. Currently, our drive-by Wi-Fi in Halchita is filling up. We'll get 10 to 15 parents there at a time. And so we do have another one of those stood up in Douglas Mesa, kind of after Monument Pass. The other piece that is happening, there's a lot of moving pieces, are access points in our schools so that students can come to the schools and we have enough coverage outside of the schools so that they can use that, as well as using non-traditional areas. And that's from LaSalle to Navajo Mountain. That our designs have done that. We're working on pulling the wires on those. One of the big pieces is going to be, we're going to get the fiber project, which is still going south, and we'll use our radios for backhaul. We're looking at upgrading those radios so that we can have a little more capacity to do some backhaul at this point. We have verbal permission to Kyle's been doing a superb job with the finance end of things, and our teams have started to try and work with interagencies as well, including NTUAW, and the other entities, Elk Petroleum and things like that, to try and find the towers so that we have to have the towers in the right place to get to the homes. That's
No, the only thing I'd add is I think it's it's a big project we're undertaking, but it has potential to have a tremendous positive effect on education in an area that historically we have struggled with internet connectivity and being able to provide this type of resource. So it has a tremendous upside. We'll all be learning as this year goes on. We'll bring back regular reports because I think it'll be interesting to see it move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
Montezuma Creek has been mentioned, Elk Petroleum, Douglas Mesa. Now what about Ojeto? There's quite a bit of homes here in the backside of the Mesa.
Yes, so Old Chato, the way we've engineered Old Chato is we want to come off of Clay Hills. Clay Hills is over the lake on the other side, and we can
Right.
we can squeeze right into Old Jato, especially if we can use the cell tower there at Old Jato. If not, there are a couple of homes that we're going to approach those people once we get closer to that area to see if we can use those, which is kind of which is probably the trickiest part of it. In just a little bit, but around the backside of Old Jato Mesa, we're going to have to come off of Clay Hills, and we should be okay with coverage there. It will be those on the backside of Old Jato that are going.
And my other question, over and then these signals or whatever.
A service agreement we're trying to fund for at least 5 years, and then we would, we're hoping to renew it.
You know, we have these signals for the remaining of whatever years that it would benefit students.
Educational network, so it won't be great for watching Game of Thrones, but it'll be really quite good for accessing Canvas, both for USU instances or for San Juan School District instances.
Yes, and I do support that. So, okay, well, thank you for answering those questions.
You bet, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Kyle, capital projects.
Quick, just an update to the board. All tracks have been completed throughout the school district. We have a couple of areas, one in Monument Valley and actually one at San Juan High School we're going to review, and they're going to be having another team come by. One of the edges was not sealed all the way, so those are finalized. The fence in Monticello is being installed currently, and we're looking at a couple other sites to see if it's going to be requisite to have a fence to maintain or keep that track protected. Most of them are surrounded by fences already, but to ensure that vehicles or other large wheeled items are not able to get on there. We're also working on getting new signs put up at all the tracks to make sure that those are fresh and people understand the expectations and guidance for being able to utilize those tracks as far as keeping bikes and scooters and things like that off. Monticello High School HVAC project is out for bid. It will close October 14th. That is a two-phase project, and the proposal that is being submitted now that has been exited for RFP is phase 1, which would include the gym area as well as some of the front classroom space, and so we're excited to be moving ahead on that project. The RL space expansion is also under review right now currently by the engineers as well as the architects, and we're hoping to have that out to bid this fall so that it will be ready to go for next spring. And again, this last item here is not a capital project, but just to let the board know that we are working currently on putting together the RFP. We've exceeded the 5 years, which is the state recommendation for an auditor's period in auditing the school district, and so I'm compiling and putting together that RFP that we can send out again later this fall so that we can have a selection made by next spring and have plenty of time for the auditors to become familiar with San Juan School District prior to August.
Any questions? Steve, Nelson, any questions?
Okay, so when will it be completed? When's this?
So phase one will be done next summer, which will include the gymnasium area, which is going to include cutting out large pieces of the old mechanics that exist there. And so the reason why we're pushing that to a summer project is to avoid having majority of students or a lot of students there just for safety concerns. Phase 2, the plan is to have that out to bid in March is what we've talked about now tentatively. Dependent upon availability and what contractors can do and what kind of interest we get, we would hope to have that completed by before next December. So December 2021 is what we're shooting for right now. That's what's on the timeline.
Thanks.
Okay.
For 2 months. Next month, we would have them on here as an action item. Last month, we did receive 2 feedbacks. One was that the FFA had covered the sustainability fee. We're catching things at times, but Navajo Mountain WE had a good discussion on this with Christy. We're looking at the CTE will probably most likely play a role in that, or a grant might play a role, but we don't think there'll need to be a sustainability fee at all in either of those. So we're working on those. Next month, we'd like to approve these for January, which would be on for January.
Plans? All right. We're going to move to the principal's reports. So Monument Valley High School, Spike, you ready?
Just before she starts, is anybody else freezing or is it just me?
Really?
Yeah,
And she's
frozen.
We'll fix it
We'll
for
see if we
you.
can get I got it turned pretty high now, we'll see what we get.
Now we're
Let me
gonna
know.
switch, Deb, it's all right. Bring your space here. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, we're glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, is the presentation up yet? Will you pull that up?
Well, it's coming up. Thank you for the mask. This is the
Yes.
most
Welcome.
comfortable.
And I'm
mask
asking
I've
about
had
2
on.
months.
I love this.
Thanks.
So usually what we'll do is, we've looked at your presentations and, so we will ask some questions unless you'd like to speak for a minute regarding them, or would you just rather we ask you?
You can ask me questions.
Okay,
I have them prepared that they'll field questions, so.
Okay,
please
good.
ask.
So Steve, do you want to start, or? Go ahead, okay. So,
I have a question.
Go
if you
ahead.
want someone to start.
Yeah.
Sorry, but I'm gonna start.
yeah,
I love your first goal. When given IEP accommodations, teachers will insert differentiation into their lesson plans to accommodate students with IEPs. That's difficult. I love it. It's something that I think as an educational body, we really struggle with how to do that. So my question is, what are you doing to support your teachers in trying to help them to be able to accomplish this goal?
So our plan of support, because right now we're just getting everything up and running and getting the curriculum out to the kids, but we have Ursula, our special ed teacher, working with the teachers. We put all of the accommodations on Aspire. We had Jonathan do that last year so that the teachers can now access their accommodations, because in the past, like, you would be handed your accommodations that a student needs and then it kind of goes in a drawer and you don't ever see it, but now they're on Aspire, and so it gets a little triangle at the corner of the name, so when you go to take roll you can see that student's on an IEP and you can click on it and you can see each of the accommodations that student needs for them individually. And so we've gotten those updated, and then we're just, right now we have the paras and the special ed teachers working with the regular teachers to change their curriculum and kind of adopt to the needs of each of the students. We also created we didn't create the document, actually Ursula already had access to a document where it has each of the accommodations and a variety of choices for what you could do to accommodate that student. And so, if somebody gets extended time, what that looks like, and so that the teachers can build that into their curriculum. And we've shared that out at our faculty meetings, so everybody has the copy of that and how they can accommodate each and every one of their students depending on what it is that they need individually. So we shared that out with them, but we also plan to do some professional development around those on Fridays, where we do different ideas with virtual learning and how you can specifically tie that to virtual learning. Although in that plan that we did share with them, it does have a lot of ideas that they can put into their virtual canvas too.
Awesome. Thank you.
so you said that you developed a mission, vision, values, and goals. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so we just pulled the leadership team together and we invited the school community council as well. And we came up with what we valued, so we did it virtually, and we just wrote down all the things that we valued as a leadership team, as the school community council, and where we wanted Monument Valley to go. And then we went and we broke into chat rooms and we kind of defended our choices of values, like why we thought those were important. And then we voted on our top 5, and so those became the values that we created. I have them if you want me to share them with you. Okay. So I screenshotted them in case you want, so I won't be on the spot. So let me see. Okay. So these were the values that we voted on. Those values, and we wrote our mission statement. The mission of Monument Valley High School is to build a climate centered around individual needs where students can thrive academically, socially, and culturally. And our vision for Monument Valley High School works with community stakeholders to develop the whole student by emerging Navajo culture, college preparation, and a safe learning environment where students adopt a growth mindset as they advocate for themselves and others. So we just built our mission and vision off of the values that we all felt were, and then we took that to the faculty, and then we took it back to the school community council last week, and so everybody went through and approved that process, and had a voice in what Monument Valley High School's goal would be.
Thank you. Mary,
Well, yeah, I want to ask about your parental in number 2. It talks about parental involvement, and so what are you doing to foster the parental involvement. What does parental involvement look like in a student's? I know it looks different now than it would have had students been attending.
Right.
And maybe or maybe not, but what does parental involvement look like, and what do you do, what are you doing to foster that?
So right now with it virtually, we're just trying to reach out to our parents and our community, and so we're doing a Facebook Live. We took that from White Horse. They were doing Facebook Live, and so we're doing Facebook Lives on Monday mornings at 8 a.m. and we just reach out to the community. They can respond back to us in the live chat. We've been inviting parents when they have like questions about their students' success and how to do the jump drives and the Chromebooks. They've been having some access. We've been training parents as well as students because parents have needed that. We've also our Q-tip teachers have developed some videos that we've released on Facebook to support that, to how you get a kid logged in and how you get their homework off of the jump drive, and because like Christy mentioned earlier, the jump drives have been like moderate success. They really haven't been that great, and a lot of them have broken stuff. We our tech people in our building have developed a way to use the 32 gigabytes that are on the Chromebooks, and so with our next scheduled event, kind of like what Ron showed you with when they came to get their curriculum, we're doing that again on the 14th. And this time we're going to be showing parents and students how to upload onto the Chromebook and how to then screencast your assignment so that it saves to the Chromebook, because they're having trouble saving from the Chromebook onto the jump drive to submit their assignments. And so we just think that like training the parents, and then parent engagement nights and CCA, and doing our virtual meetings just to keep the parents involved. And then just the school community council, we're advertising that and the positions, and we didn't get anyone volunteering to join other than what we already had, so we just kept the same committee members. But we are just putting it out there because we want everyone to feel invited and to be a part of our culture in our school.
So one follow-up question with that: do you feel like, what is your percentage of parental involvement directly with their children and their student in facilitating their education?
I would probably be pulling a number out of a hat right now if I were telling you what it was.
Okay.
But I can tell you that our individual learning plans, you might have saw that on our data. We've got all but 3 for all of our students that are registered, and that took parent involvement in coming up with those plans. So right now I feel like our number is pretty high in our parent involvement because they had to be a part of that in designing that for their students. Whether or not we'll be able to maintain that, I don't know. I'm shooting for that. I hope that we'll be able to maintain that parent involvement. I know that we've had a lot of parents we've been fielding phone calls from parents where they, ask specifically how to help their student and what it is that they need to do and stuff. So we've been sending out Aspire notifications, like we'll send out emails weekly to the whole student body so that we can do to both the parent contact and the students, just so that we can keep them up to date on any changes that are happening in the school. So right now I feel like parent involvement is pretty high. I don't know that it's always been that high, but right now what we're doing.
Good. And I love that you're teaching the parents, giving them that help with the technology. That's
Well, that came from those
for a long time.
From those phone calls, because we really wouldn't have thought about that. Do you know what I mean? Like we just I know Jonathan English had gained one on Canvas, on how to do Canvas, and so we had put that on Facebook, but it wasn't until we started getting the questions saying, I don't know how to help my student get their homework off of this jump drive, or how to put it on, to save it and stuff, that we're like, oh yeah, we need to educate parents. So that, and really I just have to credit my staff for that. Like they have just been stepping up. My teachers have been doing some fantastic things in problem solving and figuring out how to reach out to the community. So.
Awesome. Great. Steve, any questions?
I'm looking at your benchmark data, and what time references is that?
Like when did they do the benchmarks?
Yeah, is that like 5 different benchmarks, or are you talking about different time frames, or?
Yeah, they are 5 different benchmarks.
So it's a point, it's one date that you're talking about there for all those numbers.
Which, yeah, they took 5 different benchmark dates. So there's different dates that they had them. But we finished them right before fourth quarter last year, so these are last year's
I see.
benchmark data.
Okay.
We take those throughout the entire year, so we have 5 of those in the secondary.
But they're not the exact same, like they're all
Mhm.
on different, so you can't really compare benchmark 5 to benchmark 1 because they're testing different standards.
And you compare one year to the next on benchmarks, and you see trends there.
Those are the types of trends that we are looking for, yes.
You compare standard to standard, yes, year to year.
But they've changed benchmarks over the last few years. I wasn't here
Yeah.
other than last year, but
we can
that's my
still compare
understanding.
the standards. What we're trying to accomplish there is a grading period where we put certain standards in it, we teach it, we test it. And so we look at the effectiveness of how well did the students learn the standards that were taught in that block. And that's what these benchmarks are trying to give to the teachers, that information. So they can compare the standards year to year.
Nelson, did you have any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
As far as the goal, what have the stakeholders been suggesting what their goals should be? Short range goals, and long range. I'm thinking once this pandemic is over, or once we start recovering from the pandemic, and the question I asked Aaron about the internet services, I'm thinking, for example, both short and for long goals. I guess if we can keep the internet up, I hope the students can utilize the services for their schoolwork, such as doing research papers or whatever they got to do for their classes. Is that would that be one of the goals maybe, do you think? I'm just curious what they're wanting to do.
I guess I'm not understanding your question. As far as retaining the internet and how we could use that in the future?
Well, that's just an example. I want to know what the short and the long goals are for Monument Valley High School. I know you're new principal. You've been assistant principal, but you as a principal, what would be your goal?
Well, outside of the 90-day plan?
Yes.
Well, ultimately, I don't know if that's true for every new principal, but for me, ultimately, I would like to see academic success. Like I would like us to be recognized for the growth that we make. And yes, I do feel that the internet is a huge benefit for our area because we haven't had that, and it just opens the door for our kids to have access to so much more. And like you said, with the Utah State classes or the other colleges that they'll be able to go to. So, I mean, for me, I would like to see, I would like to see our culture change to where everybody feels involved as a community, as part of the school and a part of their kids' education process, and that our students feel like they can advocate for themselves and that they can be successful when they graduate, that we're turning out students that are going to be running our communities and running our world later, and so they'll be fantastic. And maybe this is visionary, it's me as a person, it's who I am, but I hope that Monument Valley High School will one day be recognized for the success and growth that we've made academically and culturally. That would be my long-term goal.
Well, of course, that's one of the goals is to get out of the turnaround and stay out of it. I mean, it's great to hear that White Horse High School is out of it now.
We're out of it as well.
I was just thinking, what are we going to do for our school? When are we going to get out of it? How are we going to get out of it? You know, on and on. But yeah, those are good ideas, and I support that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming up.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, TES, I'm not gonna say it, I'm not very good at it. TES, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
This is a copy of the student development plan that we've been talking about, so I thought it would be helpful. I can't get to my fingers.
Oh, perfect, thank you. Want to start? Mary, are you January though, or?
Well, I need to write them down.
I can
Kind of-
start.
I wrote mine down. Yes, go
Okay,
ahead.
I
I'll
just,
start again. So Denise, I'm really not gonna ask you a question, but I'm gonna just maybe draw your attention to something. I love your goals, and I know they come, you were working on your 90-day plan. Maybe it is a question, maybe it's just a comment, but it seems like it's one thing to get goals down in a 90-day plan and to have good goals and to work through that process. And in some ways we do that quite often and we get good at it. I don't know that I know it's harder to get really good at monitoring, are we accomplishing our goals as we go along? It's so many things can then become blurry that we don't necessarily have systems built in place to stop and say, what's it going to look like at this point if we're accomplishing this goal? What's it going to look like if we accomplish it at this point? And really explicitly stopping with your team and your resources and saying, how are we doing? Is it working? Rather than getting clear to the end of the time frame and say, did we do it? Did we not do it? Anyway, so I don't know if you've put a lot of thought into that. If you have, you could speak to it. I know Christy's worked really well to do that. How are you going to build in checks along the way to see if you're on course?
Okay.
Because you don't want to see it a lot, and I did a
We'll
little.
participate in virtual learning with them.
And all this week, they've been meeting one-on-one with each student, their tests are to benchmark them. And so that's where we are right now, so I don't have, starting next week, we're trying out Class Dojo this year because we found videos, they can show samples of their work, they can take pictures, and there's no that they're earning for anything that they do. The teachers can be very generous, and that's motivating. We're looking at how do we keep these students motivated so that they want to be involved, they want to come to school when this is over. And so anything we can do to just make it exciting and fun, that's our goal. And we think that Class Dojo, to just keep them exciting and wanting to join in.
And with this, did the students receive this when they came? Did they do an open house at your
We
school?
did have an open house, and it was very successful. Like I said, we had,
Oh yeah, I saw your pictures.
yeah, it was very fun and very exciting. We kind of named it, we had such great success. The students were excited to see their last year's teacher and their new teacher are bringing them back now, the nation, in order to move forward.
okay, so that's my question, and you may not have answers to anything that I was gonna ask, was how and what has been the most helpful, and how have you adjusted because of the information on these forms? But are you saying you really haven't received them back and?
Right, trying to make sure who has internet, who doesn't have internet, who needs the hot spots, is this gonna work? So we're still in this uncomfortable mode, but we figure within a couple of weeks we're gonna have this down and it will be running smooth. But this just gives us an idea of what, our teachers are very willing to go out and make home visits and make sure these students are being taken care of and given what they need, so.
Okay, and so with that, because it occurs to me that maybe you're having more interaction
That's true.
that,
Do you find that?
and really getting parents involved in
We have to, because they're overseeing and we have a lot of questions, they have a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that they're.
So you feel they're reaching out a whole lot more and interacting a lot more than they would have had they just, here's our kids, we dump them off, you teach them, we'll see them tonight.
And I'm surprised our numbers are up as well. I thought that's really interesting that, we're up to 306 students, and that surprised me. I expected that to fall back a little bit with the online, so.
So maybe in the long run, this is really a positive, good thing that the parents are interacting more than they ever would have without this kind of thing, and that it will continue once we get kids all back in our schools.
And I think
Which we
teachers
don't.
really do, the parents are appreciating teachers because now they see, the backside of it. So that's been a real plus, I think, that there is a little more respect and appreciation, and we want to help them, help their children be successful, and that's what it is. We want to win-win for both.
Nice.
No question, but I just want to comment that I really appreciate you and Karina both for the job that you're doing, stepping in as still is and has been quite a challenge to do this.
Do without Christy. She's
Yeah.
amazing. And I have to say,
Nelson, do you have any comments?
Pretty much. Again, we do have challenges, which is the wanted to make a point that Navajo Nation or support us to do this. For the record, that is how this came about. To see how the second starts school, and also.
Thank you. I think I would almost like to have the River Region come back at the end of the school year and speak to what we learned back and see how it went. So, thank you so much. All right, we are going to Matt, number 6, LEA. And 7 and 8.
Okay, the LEA specific license and endorsement request, we talked about that. We've already approved one request. This, to give you a little bit of context and history, the majority of the teachers that you're seeing on there on this request would have fallen into what would have been called an authorization under the old system. The authorization or combination of both. These educators that are on here, we are requesting the board approve for a 3-year LEA specific license. That does not necessarily mean that all of them will be on an LEA specific for 3 years. We'll be working to move them to an associate's or to a professional level license, but this is step 1, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about that.
Now, you brought a list to approve that one?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me.
It's not, there's just one on here for the 1 year, everybody else is 3 years.
Okay,
It's not.
all right.
A rather large policy, I think it's 12 pages. Harassment policy 4111 encapsulated the Title IX grievance process. As of May of this last year, with the changes to the Title IX regulations that have gone into effect, went into effect on the 14th of August, that policy no longer is sufficient to capture that process. So what this is a specific that were enacted in May about to the process. It is a from start to finish with requirements, the entire process step by step. That being said, if not, that's fine as well. I do think is tweaking this policy. I don't. Regulations are quite large, and we're still in a learning process along with every other school district in the state. But if you have any questions specific about the policy, I'd be more than
Say about the goals, that the school sets and monitoring those along the way. So that being said, just, one of the court violations of Title IX. So a failure to do so may be corrective, instead of a goal, it's a directive, it's an expectation. How do you monitor a responsibility? Because they're not employed, they just show up to school because they have to. Actually happening, because the whole policy is about that very thing, or, very much about that.
that piece of the policy comes from the new requirements of actual notice. When historically, if a person a person with the ability to do something about it should have known, then the school district had actual notice. Now, if anybody knows, the school district has actual notice, and our way to measure that or to make sure that we're reaching that is we're going to have to rely on education. We're going to have to rely on continually talking to our employees, our volunteers, our students, our Hope Squads, our Unity Clubs, and just really keeping our finger on that, because when we find out that somebody new, which, as Mr. Laws indicated when he was here a month ago, in a lot of those situations that he reported on, people knew, and we haven't had that culture of reporting for whatever reason. I'm not placing blame anywhere, but creating that culture of reporting and educating the importance of that reporting are the two avenues that we have right now to monitor that.
Any other questions?
I noticed this was titled Policy and Procedures. Just my way of thinking is that the board establish and approve policy, whereas the procedure is kind of the nuts and bolts of things, how the policy is carried out by the district. So I just want to know, is this policy and the procedures all lumped into one, that will be presented to the board as policy, or can we offload some of this from the policy, separate it out from the procedure, and have administration have control of the procedure?
So to meet the requirements of the regulation, district has not had a board-approved administrative procedure process. It's been the board approves policy, and then procedure is something that is a little more liquid. When creating this, I went back and forth on whether to have come up with this hybrid version of policy and procedure that I'm asking to be approved as policy to meet the requirements. San Juan School District Policy 6140, attendance and absences. This is the virtual options that we are now offering. In the meantime, we do need to have, Tenant asked me to develop this and put it on here, knowing full well this is this current overlapping policy. In the meantime, this meets our requirements and gets us squared away for the this school year. It's just and as you can see, it's simply just some language added to the end of the policy.
I have heard a little bit of concern about that, from a few teachers about that whole keeping track about online, and it's kind of gray, a lot of gray area with that.
Yeah, and this gives them some idea of how to mark attendance, how to keep it, and I've had a discussion with not a lot of teachers, but a few teachers, and with Julie and Christy and a few people, and even in our traditional classroom, we forget we have these kids and we call roll and they're here, and then in every class you have a kid or two that does nothing. They're still marked there. They're not marked absent. They might be not falling behind academically and reaching out to a parent, but there's no discussion of marking that kid absent. But virtual is sometimes looked at differently. If they're falling behind, they want to mark them absent. And really, this is saying if they log on, if they email you, if they're there and participating, they're there. They're not absent. Now, are they making academic progress? Still has to be monitored. And it's just similar to what happens in a classroom. But anyway, this is the law does require that we have some kind of policy that states how will we mark attendance so that the state can, they still utilize attendance for funding and for other means.
Sure.
So how will we keep track of that?
Okay.
Matt made an interesting comment that a lot of these policies are going to have to come back. We're finding, and Matt's finding, and we're having discussions on it, a lot of policies, and that's because education's always moving. I would just let the board know we probably should be having a policy in front of you every meeting, and so expect a lot of policies, and that's really just should be an ongoing thing because everything's always turning, it's always moving and changing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gina, sorry we left you till the end.
It's all good.
Heard how all the classes count and how those classes work towards a CTE pathway. One of the new completer courses which will be required for students to complete their pathway allows students a more valuable lifetime learning on job sites. And feel like having a digital portfolio for students, he recommends that students develop a LinkedIn profile. Are you familiar with LinkedIn? So it's a professional platform. Students have to be 16 years old to have an account. they worked with the state CTE director, the state data privacy director, and the legal counsel for the state of Utah to develop an approved policy for schools to allow students to use LinkedIn. And then they have recommended that we approach our school boards about allowing our district students to use LinkedIn portfolios. So I am here to ask for your approval, recommendations on using LinkedIn for our students, our CTE completer students.
Any questions?
I read through the information and it looks like, you know, all the safeguards are in place, all the education that parents and students need to know. And I guess it would just be like anything else, and like what we were just talking about with Matt, that maybe repeated conversation about what somebody reads initially, that they're reminded, because we know on social media and people of all ages, but I would say especially kids, students who don't, you know, they haven't lived life as long and don't know what things they could regret later, or, you know, just how careful and responsible they should be. And so just updated or continued reading or reminders of this kind of stuff is helpful.
Okay.
We have this on as an action item after
Okay.
6 o'clock, so
Super.
we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Coming in. Appreciate it. Okay, we are done with our agenda, but we can move down to, I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did.
Gina? Sorry, Steve had a
Well,
comment. but
that's more,
okay.
more for the board.
Oh, sorry, more for the board.
Yes, as far as policy is concerned, I'm a little bit hesitant to name a particular vendor or a particular website or something within policy. You know, I think it'd be wise to have just an overall social media policy, but naming LinkedIn specifically in policy, I guess I'd like to avoid that.
Yeah.
Because it's fluid, it changes, it's going to change something 5 years from now, and it may not be the best platform to do that on, you know, and so.
So we could name it what?
It is the state
This is
The
specific.
state is
to the
specific. The state
Choosing
has approved
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn as the platform.
So it
to
is-
use.
Can we in our policy have a more generic form and say such as LinkedIn, so that, but we, I mean, reality, like you said, we need to change policy, but yeah, it does get outdated
Could
when
we
it's
put-
specifically named.
Was CTE internship platform policy? I don't know.
And this
And
goes
then
along with the
sure,
pathways
I mean,
and.
Matt would know better on that.
Sorry, I can't talk. I'm not familiar with the specifics of this, but is this something, as Board Member Black alluded to earlier, is this something that can be handled procedurally, saying that, you know, we have permission to use LinkedIn for the purposes of CTE, or does the state specifically require policy?
I think ultimately what the state is looking for is we have to have approval from the board to use these types of things.
Can you come up here? Sorry, Kit. You gotta remember we're online too.
I think when it comes to these things, when we do it, they're looking for us to make sure that we have the concurrence and approval of our board to do that. Whatever mechanism we use to make sure that the board is okay with that, I think is satisfactory. I know that most places look at it as policy, yes. I've been an advocate for a long time of not including procedures in policy and just having straight policy. But just making sure that we have the approvals we need to use a platform for you know, an online portfolio that a student could use not only for their preparing their portfolio for this class, but also for life. And many of the industry certifications that they get, potentially could get in their senior year, do have industry value and can lead to helping them find a job.
So we could make this more of a generic policy
And a procedure.
or procedure.
The board could elect to
Title,
give,
retitle it.
the board could elect to approve that we use LinkedIn as part of this CTE requirement, and it would not be formal policy that
Okay.
the board has approved.
Okay, and we'd still be okay on your end?
Yes.
I mean, the big thing is, we need to make sure that as we go to parents and stuff, that you know, and that you approve of
Sure.
the process we're doing.
Okay,
And that's really the bottom line.
okay. Does that clarify that? Thank you.
Okay, good point.
Any more questions? Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have time that we could go into closed session.
Like to bid this.
Okay, see ya. I need a motion though? Well, you can't even motion twice?
You've got two people.
Oh, that's right. No, sorry. Okay. I need a motion on
Reinvent
the closed
it.
session for the discussion of real property.
I move to
Call
go
a
into,
motion to go to closed session for the real property discussion.
second,
Roll call.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes.
Nelson Yellowman, yes?
Okay, we're going into closed session. So we. Just get your computer back on.
Yep, just go right now.
Okay. And Nelson's on, right? Okay, it's 6, let's start. Okay, we are to the public portion of our meeting, and so we actually have 2 Sam on Squared awards. The first one is Kim Schaefer, and she's actually on the phone with us. And then we will have Aaron Brewer, the superintendent is going to present those.
I will. So Kim, pretend you are here right now, okay?
I am like right there. I have the YouTube going on the screen, and I can
Are you-
see the superintendent is moving into the
Oh,
to the center part of that U-shaped board table. It's like I'm there.
awesome. Well, just make sure you're standing in your office right here beside me. I want to read a couple of nominations for Kim Schaefer. I do believe this is your second San Juan Squared Award, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I think Aaron as well?
Yes.
So we have our first repeat winners of our San Juan Squared Award, so that's awesome. But this is, you had 2 nominations over the last little bit. I'll read both of those for you, Kim. What an amazing job of organization and collaborations for student reentry. Tremendous effort was invested by the Whitehorse High School team to roll out the new school year to support remote learning for scholars. Although it was hard to see the smiles under the mask, you could feel the energy and excitement as students met with teachers under tents to kick off a year of learning. Nominating Kim Schaefer and Whitehorse High School team. Then the second one, I wish to nominate Kim Schaefer for a San Juan Squared Award. Kim started dialogue with targeted individuals to improve the internet connectivity for students in the river region of the district. This has been a major problem historically, and due to the cost and greatness of the problem, it has never moved past dialogue in the past. Kim's urgency and commitment didn't fall on deaf ears. She was successful in getting the attention of tribal leaders and industry leaders who for the first time mapped out a possible solution. Her efforts led to a proposal for $3.9 million being submitted to the legislature for consideration in a special session. The money was improved, and for the first time there is hope that this historical student connectivity problem could actually be solved. Great work, Kim. So you were nominated by Christy Fitzgerald on that first nomination and by myself on the second one. And we really appreciate all that you're doing down there, Kim. Your leadership, we appreciate your team. You've got a great team working together. I just think you're very worthy of this award tonight, so congratulations. If you were here, we would snap a photo. Might have to do that later, sometime this week.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, Kim.
Aaron Brewer. Guess we gotta stand right here. All right. So I would like to nominate Aaron Brewer for a San Juan Squared Award. Aaron joined efforts with Kim Schaefer very early in the effort to solve a student connectivity problem in the river region. Aaron worked closely with experts who became involved and submitted plans to solve the problem. He contacted state and other officials who were positioned to have influence in key decisions that would affect the possible funding for the proposal. His efforts contributed to a proposal for $3.9 million being submitted to the legislature for consideration in a special session. This money was approved. For the first time, there is hope that this historical connectivity problem could actually be solved. Great work, Aaron. I know you and Kim worked closely on this, getting it off the ground and getting it moving. I know a lot of other people have become involved, but certainly those first efforts to have vision and see this happening are just historical. So I appreciate all you're doing on there, Aaron. Can't hug it, Tony. Let's get a picture right here. This is yours.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. You bet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your efforts and what you've done. Okay, we're to the citizens' comment portion of our meeting, and I need to remind that participants may address the board on any item on the agenda or on any other topic. If the topic deals with individual employees or students, it cannot be discussed during public comment. The board's function at this time is to listen to public comment. So we've had a couple of emails that fall under that category that will not be read in public comments. So Eva's going to go first, and then we have Jim after Eva who can address this. And we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, the first public comment submitted on email is from Sarah Gosney. She states, "One of my biggest concerns as a parent is the lunchroom. I'm very concerned that the space between students may be cut down even more if students come back to school, as was addressed earlier in the meeting. Has eating outside and or in classrooms been considered? This is the most likely time for spread, so it really concerns me that this is the time students are closest together."
Yes, what I'll say is we have looked at all concerns. There's input coming from teachers and others. We've looked at possible outside, and we will continue to look at those solutions. We will try to do our best, as we stated in our entry plan, but we did recognize that the lunchroom, especially at Blanding Elementary, due to the number of students and the limited amount of time, is a great challenge. It's similar to some of our bus rides that actually when we send our academic teams, our activity teams out, sometimes they have the same situation, that it's just very difficult. We do know that if we do wear the mask to the food and then to the table, and then we eat and we wear the mask out, so we're trying to limit the number of the amount of time, and we've been told that 15 minutes is a real threshold to watch. So we think for the most part, other than some students that eat very slowly, the majority of the students eat quickly and are in and out pretty quickly, much quicker than 15 minutes. But it is a real concern. We'll continue to monitor and adjust it.
Thank you.
And the second is a comment from Kim Schaefer. She states, "I would like to mention that the Whitehorse High School Raider team is celebrating our exit from school turnaround while continuing to be a strong team for our scholars. Our team is stronger than ever and will continue to do all we can to assist scholars learning all that is possible. Thank you to the San Juan School District Board of Education for supporting our school and our scholars. The systems we have in place help us to support scholars even during distance learning. We are very excited about the extension of our school's network to the homes of scholars. This is very much needed so that we can provide grade level learning experiences virtually. Our team definitely extends to the district level, and we want to thank district personnel for their continued support of our school's efforts. Kim Schaefer, Whitehorse High School Principal.
Okay, all right, Jim, are you ready?
Sure.
Come on
Thank
up.
you. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Sayers, and I think all of you know me. Some of you, I've known your parents and even your grandparents in some cases. I worked at Bluff Elementary for 10 years. I just wanted to, I sent out a commentary or a report this morning to the board members on Bluff's effort, Bluff Town Council's effort to purchase the old school in Bluff. And I don't think there's anything I can tell you about Bluff that you don't already know. Bluff believes this school should belong to our town, our community. If we get it, we'll have to find money to repair and maintain it, but we believe we can do that. I sent out that report, as you know, and I wanted to state that I appreciate the school districts working with us regardless of the outcome of this negotiation, and I especially want to thank President Mon, Superintendent Nielsen, Kyle Hostler, and Hustine Yelleman for their work on our community's behalf. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer those right now.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank you, Jim.
Mhm.
Okay. No more public comment with the consent agenda, so I need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second?
Discussion? None? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Was that opposed or in favor?
In favor.
Oh, okay. All right, possible action items. The Bluff property offer acceptance. Do I have a motion? Okay. That motion, obviously there's not one. Okay, the COVID student reentry plan, next steps. I don't know if we need to
You're
motion
welcome to
on
make a
that.
motion. I felt like, anyway,
I don't think
unless
so.
you want, I felt like I got some good input from the board.
Okay. Number 3, the San Juan School District Policy 4115. Is there a motion for anything on that? Okay. This, number 4, San Juan School District LEA specific license endorsement request.
Motion to accept the San Juan School District LEA specific license endorsement request.
Okay, motion by Nelson,
Second.
second by Mary. Discussion? None? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. San Juan School District Policy 6140. Is there a motion for that? Oh, yeah. Okay. And number 6, the CTE student use of LinkedIn. That's what it is, sorry. We're looking at you. I want this done.
You've got this language.
Well, okay, I move the approval of students using LinkedIn for electronic portfolio subject to the safeguards that have been proposed to us.
Motion by Steve.
Second
I'll
motion.
second.
Okay. Discussion?
I guess just to clarify, we didn't pass a policy, just approved that we are allowing students to use that equipment.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. All right, information items, Superintendent.
Yes, so I'll just make you aware that CCR Day is quickly approaching, September 16th. We had talked just briefly when we were building that plan that possibly that would be, we might make that a regular school day in the event that we were changing our schedule to remove 2 days. But a couple of things have come up and we're going to propose that that still be a traditional CCR day, that those things are first of all, they allowed 6 days to be moved rather than just the 4, which we're only moving 2. And then the next thing is that we did find out that even clear back last spring, a number of professional development and consultant type experiences had already been planned on that CCR day, knowing that it was available in some ways for some of this professional development. So anyway, knowing that that's in place, we are recommending that our CCR days be just traditional CCR days like we've seen in the past. You'll still see, we do think you will see possibly some parents and students have appointments in the school or out in front of the school, depending on how they're running it, which we're seeing already. And they will be continuing to build student education plans through that process. I wanted to make sure the board all received flyers on our USBA regional meeting, September 23rd, 6 p.m., which is a virtual meeting. So I'm assuming that we can all just be in our homes and jump on a Zoom or whatever information we get, which system they're using, but we'll be able to attend that way. If you have any concerns or questions, let me know, but did everyone receive that information? And then October 14th, that's not, it's October 14th? Let me edit that.
Is it?
Our next board, I think it's the 9th.
It is October 14th.
Okay, that night should be taken out of there, I didn't get that done. So, October 14th is our next board meeting, and again, that's here at the district office. We'll plan on a similar situation at this point, with our social distancing and our masks, and Nelson and Lucille and anyone can just decide where they want to attend that meeting from. And then our board meetings are on there, those are the dates, so we have that on there every month.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, our meeting is adjourned at 6:14. Thank you. Come
Thank you.
next month, all of you.
Come on back.
Not quite a record.